This is Weights and Wealth, your one-stop shop for entertaining education on building a stronger body and bank account.
We are not doctors or financial advisors and must warn you this is not medical or investing advice. It is for your entertainment.
Welcome back to Weights and Wealth. We have another interview episode for you here today. This is our first time interviewing another personal trainer on the show. So we have Lexi here with us today.
Hello.
Say hi.
Hi, I'm Lexi, went to college with them.
Yeah, we didn't know Lexi that well in college. I think we met a few times, but when we moved down to Charleston during COVID, around the same time, Lexi moved down here as well. And Lexi and I became personal trainers around the same time as well. 2019, I think, is that when you started? Yep. So similar timeline, I guess, as far as personal training goes. We've both been training clients for about 4 years now. Before we get into the rest of the interview, we'll go through our standard opening here. Lexi, do you want to give a shout out to anyone?
Yeah, I'm going to give a shout out to my assistant coach, Allison. Hopefully you'll watch this, and thanks for being a part of my team.
Great. Okay, and our article for today, Nick, do you want to?
We have our weights wisdom.
Weights wisdom. All right.
From Lexi.
From Lexi. Okay.
So Lexi, what is your weights wisdom of the week?
Movement. I do think a lot of people, client or non-client, I have found in the past 3 to 4 years of coaching that people don't move enough. Most people are pretty sedentary depending on their job. So I would say just definitely get moving more. Doesn't matter if it's lifting or biking or running. I think whatever movement you enjoy doing, that's what I tell clients to do, because you'll be able to be the most consistent with that.
Yep, walking is extremely important just throughout the day. I know I've talked about it before, but just in the middle of the workday, I'll just go for a 20-minute walk. I do probably 2 of those a day or so. So yeah, and then our article. So we actually have 2 this week, one provided by Lexi, and then we also found a pretty neat article about a dog that ran a marathon.
Came in 7th place, got a medal.
Apparently a dog just joined this marathon and ran the entire thing with everybody and
just started running with everyone and ran the whole thing. So we thought that was funny. We'll throw pictures in it when we edit if you're watching on YouTube or on Spotify.
That's so cool.
We figured it went well with Lexi's step advice.
Yes. Yeah. So back on to my article. NEAT. I talk a lot about this on my Instagram, Little Lifting Lex, if you want to give me a follow. But your needs, that's your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And that is so important. Whether you're a client dialing in into nutrition or exercise, or just someone who wants to live a healthy life, most of your calories are burned outside of your exercise portion or workout portion of the day. That can include cooking, laundry, dancing, just walking. And so I personally give all my clients step goals, but the article specifically talked about why NEAT, your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, is so important just to live an overall healthy life. So in that article through NASM, which is where I got my nutrition and personal training certifications, it kind of goes a little bit deeper into NEAT and why it's so important.
Yeah, they've done studies that show that the people that bounce their leg all the time, so people like me who just annoy everyone they sit with, tend to burn 400 more calories a day just from that NEAT. So that's an example of NEAT and how it can increase the amount of calories you burn in quite a significant way.
All right, now getting into our episode a little bit, we'll get a little bit of your background first, Lexi. So I know you've been in, involved with, working out health for a while, since I think high school, right? So I don't know if you just want to start there, and then you can tell us about how you got to be a personal trainer.
Yeah. So it all started kind of growing up. I was a competitive cheerleader and I ran track and cross country in high school. My goal was to be a collegiate athlete. I specifically wanted to run track and cross country. I originally had a full ride to run at Dayton, University of Dayton in Ohio, where I met both of them at. And I actually had a stress fracture in my femur that put me out of running for about a year and a half. And that's when I really looked back at my history, and I had no strength training foundation. My nutrition, I was not fueling properly. And I realized that I was totally overtraining, and my coaches had really no idea what they were doing to my body. And that's kind of where my love for running came from, and just being so active was throughout my childhood years, but specifically high schools when I realized that I had no strength foundation. And that's when I wanted to do something in that field, was right before college. So instead of running in college, I ended up just getting my personal training and nutrition certification senior year of college, alongside getting my license to teach. So I am educated to teach, and I decided to not go that route. Graduating in the middle of COVID 2020, I was like pushed in this position. I can use my certifications that I got senior year and start my own business. So 2020 of June, I got my own LLC, and I was like, I have a background in running. I have a somewhat of a background of underfueling, and I knew what not to do, overtraining and underfueling. So with that, I was like, I think I can relate what I did poorly to my clients and help them not do what I did. And so I think just through experience, that's helped me be a better coach, because I know where a lot of my clients have struggled with, because I've been there myself. So fast forward to now, I have a virtual assistant and an assistant coach. I'm very happy with my online business. So I have all online nutrition and personal training clients. I have my own app developed in the App Store, and I'm looking to start to train local clients here probably at the end of 2023 to kind of build my local clientele here, which has taken me a while since I moved here 3 years ago to kind of make connections. But I'm all about that online platform, social media, specifically Instagram, and then I'm wanting to start my local sphere. So that's a little bit about my background.
Yeah, how are you wanting to start training here? Because I know there are a few different routes people go, whether starting at a big box gym and just working there, or renting out part of a gym and then just doing that.
Mm-hmm. So that's kind of been my what do I do first? And I have worked for Hilo, that is local to Mount Pleasant. I started to part-time instruct there, which I liked, but they wanted me full-time, and my business is my full-time job, so I couldn't give 100% to them. So I ended up separating ways with them. But the in-person that I did instructing those classes was really great for just building my knowledge in person, because everything online is done just with demo videos and voiceovers and video feedback. I use Loom videos specifically in my app. So it's a lot different from in-person to online, and I want to get that in-person experience. So I have some in-person experience, but I think moving forward, I'm going to have a garage gym at my new build, hoping to close end of summer, but I'm going to build that garage gym out. So hoping to have a whole wide variety of equipment, and then hopefully build my local clientele.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah.
Training in person is so different from training online. I'm kind of the reverse. So I started in big box gyms, and now I'm online just part-time with a couple of clients.
Okay.
But they're completely different ways of training people. Do you know which one you prefer? It sounds like you might prefer the online one more.
Yes, because I think it's almost more worth your time because of the programming and stuff aspect. And I've designated specific days for programming for client check-ins. But then again, I don't know. I haven't done a lot of local. So what's your...
I much prefer in person. It definitely is more efficient being online. Mm-hmm. And in that sense, for you can train a lot more clients, so you can make more money. And then also for the client, it's cheaper for them because they're not paying you to spend an hour with them. But the benefit with the in-person is that when you spend a lot of time with clients, you can build more of a relationship with them. And I feel like you get a better feel for not only what they need, but how to better teach and instruct and connect with them. So there's definitely pros and cons to both. And I think they're different skills as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the kind of what I miss about I'm looking for in the in-person is definitely just the form and proper technique. Because a lot of with my online clients, I don't necessarily know what they're exactly doing in the gym unless they send me a form video, and some don't. And I'm like, there's a risk for injury. There's a risk for, you know, not stimulating the right muscle group of what I would be planned in your program. So it's like,
yeah, that's why I was against getting into the online coaching for a while, is because I prescribe a lot of like barbell squats, bench, deadlifts, overhead press, a lot of barbell movements, a lot of free weight movements. So I didn't want to tell people to do those movements and not be able to have any kind of control over their form. So eventually I got past losing that control, and I have my clients attach videos, at least like one video, depending on what the exercise is, for a different set. But you can give input to them through there and make suggestions, but being in person with someone, you can change it like right away. It's just, it is different. But also, like for clients, if they've been lifting for a while, they might not need you there to fix their form. So again, you get into that kind of time conundrum. Is it worth it? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So now we can really get into the topic for today, which is women's hormones. So, I mean, I know, Ted, you know a decent amount about them. I just kind of started learning about them over the past couple months. It's been, you know, I've learned about mostly testosterone because that's what affects me.
Yes.
But just as I start learning more and more about health, I'm starting to look into topics that I wouldn't initially want to. And I think you've started to look into them a lot more recently. Like I know I see it on your Instagram story. So I guess, do you just want to give us like the basics of what women's hormones are and what they do?
Yes. Yeah. So estrogen and progesterone are our two main hormones. There's also testosterone. We have a lot smaller amount, like you said, mostly in men. But specifically with clients or in this sphere, I really like this online space or just nutrition and training in general because it's ever evolving. You can always learn more. So kind of like you're wanting to grow your education and knowledge in hormones. And I'm kind of the same way, especially because most of my clients are kind of around my age, mid-20s, 30s, 40s, and hormones are very, very relevant in how your body responds, and no matter what phase you're in, fat loss phase, reversing, maintenance, lean building phase. And for me, I've been kind of on this restoring my hormone journey the past like 4 months. So I've really dived deeper in what am I doing right now for my body to perform optimally, and how can it broaden my knowledge around hormones specifically to better help my clients. So I'm actually looking into getting a couple different hormone mentors, how I can navigate reading blood work, prescribing different supplementations, and or getting an assistant coach that can do that for me, just so I can help more in the like hormone space, because I know for women, especially my age, like coming off the hormonal birth control pill like I did, or just getting routine blood work, which I definitely suggest doing every year, even every 6 months, especially if you're a chronic dieter. I would recommend getting blood work before starting a fat loss phase, so you're able to see the full panel and see what's missing before you add more stress, aka being in a deficit of fat loss phase. If your hormones are out of whack, you're not going to be able to respond. If your hormones are out of whack and you're wanting to build muscle, your body's not going to be able to do that optimally. So definitely it starts with a solid foundation of hormones to be balanced, and then you can kind of start from there.
Yeah, there's a lot to go off of there. I guess the easiest point to jump to might be back to the beginning with the story that you told at the beginning of the podcast. I thought that screamed female athlete triad, right?
Yes.
Because like literally the definition of it. So I guess we can get into that for maybe any of the younger female audience. This is something that really impacts like high school girls in sports. Like you said, your coach knew nothing about essentially what he was doing. Nick and I both ran cross country as well. So like with my sister, I saw that as well. Like these coaches really don't understand the female athlete triad, which is pretty basic. So for those that don't know, female athlete triad is essentially being in a extreme calorie deficit, not getting enough energy, having a loss of bone mass, which Lexi referenced with her stress fracture.
Yes.
And then the other one would be overdoing activity. So this really impacts runners and a lot of, I think, female athletes. A lot of male athletes are less big on the running. So, and also we like to eat a lot. So, and then with women's hormones, if you're tanking your hormones, if you're losing estrogen, it affects how your calcium is stored in your bones. So that's the third part of that. So if you want to get into the female athlete triad at all, I think that'd be good for any young females we have listening.
And if all of your levels are starting to drop, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, you're going to see your body's not getting the nutrients and it's going to feel depleted. Your sleep is going to be off. Your digestion is going to be off. Your gut health is going to be out of whack. You're not going to be able to recover. And there's going to be a lot of missing links there. So, I mean, I tell clients first, start at their blood work. And if you don't have a regular cycle, that's kind of like your first indication that something is off hormonally. You could also be not hungry at all. That's definitely something that your metabolism under fueling that you need to restore, or something's off in your hormones as well. It kind of just starts with the base of your hormones, and then that's pretty much going to tell you what to do next. And again, I'm working on, looking at that blood work based on clients' blood work. What can I do? What can I give? What suggestions can I make? What can I prescribe supplement wise? So I've been taking a ton of supplements, chasteberry oil, zinc, pretty much everything to get my hormones back at a healthy level, nutrients, vitamins, cutting inflammation. So anti-inflammatory diet. I did a 2-week hormone flush. There's a lot of steps that go into play to rebalance those hormones, and I'm still kind of working on it. Acupuncture I also just started, so that's kind of interesting. I haven't done a ton of research on it, but I've gotten to the point where I'm like, might as well just try a whole bunch of things.
If it works,
I did
acupuncture
for my femur injury, and that seemed to help. But now I guess we'll see.
We have talked about acupuncture on the show before because my sister is in school to be a naturopathic doctor, and she's taken acupuncture classes for some sort of minor in acupuncture or something.
What does she think? Does she?
She thinks there's a lot of validity in it. So we did do an interview with her. I think that was episode 8. That was pretty early on. But something you said about women's cycles is a very direct comparison to us. So in the testosterone ebook that we recently came out with, we talked about how for guys, one of your key signals for your health is, do you have morning wood when you wake up, right? So for women, very similar comparison is, how is your cycle? Do you have a regular cycle? If you don't, that's a very good tool that women have to know how their health is doing, because everything, you went over a lot of the big stressors, but you got sleep, stress, inflammation, lack of micro or macronutrients, gut health, and then environmental toxins. Those are all big areas that will affect your hormones and your cycle as a woman. So that's definitely a really good starting point for women to look at.
Yeah. And something else that Ted and I talk about a lot is just the state of testosterone in men right now is not good. So much so that they keep moving the reference range of what's considered healthy, because if they didn't, everybody would have low testosterone. So if you want to talk to a little bit about the state of women's hormones, I'm not sure how much you've started looking at your clients' blood work, but just in general, what do you know about it?
I guess birth control might be a good offshoot of that.
Yes.
Because that's kind of the state of women's hormones.
Yeah. So most of my niche, kind of like I talked about previously, is the age from 20 to 40. So I have postpartum clients, clients who are working on getting pregnant, but post birth control clients specifically, I'm trying to zero in on, because that's kind of my phase right now, coming off of the hormonal birth control. But it completely depletes nutrients and vitamins. So as soon as I got off the pill, I did blood work, and my blood work was so bad. It's made some improvements in the past 3 months. But with that, there's a lot of supplement recommendations. I'm really focusing on rest. So parasympathetic rest and digest state instead of the sympathetic flight and fight response. So I'm trying to lower stress. So I've had to take my training intensity down. I've had to increase food. I've had to gain weight. I've had to really focus on just rest and recovery. And it's been hard. I'm not going to lie. But that's what I tell my clients is what you're doing now. If your blood work is showing signs where everything's depleted and things are out of whack, what you're doing now is not getting you where you want to go. So being uncomfortable is the catalyst of growth. It's what I always remind them, kind of what I remind myself too. You have to take different action to yield different results. So with hormones specifically, coming off the pill, you have to realize on the pill, you're being fed synthetic hormones. And so cycle on the pill is a fake bleed. When you come off of it, your body's like, well, what am I doing now? So now it's going back to the blood work and what do you need individually? And I think it's kind of starting off, what were you doing before? And for me, I was way overdoing it. And so now it's like cutting back and kind of learning how my body thrives differently. So it's been really interesting to see the past 3 months. But yeah, it's just work in progress. Yeah.
Are you feeling better at all? Because I know, like, I don't get my blood work done, or I haven't gotten it done. I did purchase it recently and I'm going to get it done. But I do know, like, when I'm not eating well and when I'm not moving much, my testosterone is probably a lot lower and I feel so much worse than I do when I'm eating well, getting outside, getting sun, moving a lot. So do you notice like a difference in how you're feeling?
Yes. Yes. I've noticed actually, which is kind of surprising, when I've moved less, like the days I have like lower than 10K steps a day, I didn't even train. I'm actually more tired than the days that I was walking 20K 1,000 steps that I trained for an hour and a half, because I'm actually giving my body the rest it needs. So it's actually taking it in instead of me being an Energizer bunny 24/7. But yes, I do feel a lot better. I'm sleeping better. My digestion's a lot better as I'm focusing on less processed, higher quality foods. And I'm really focusing on like my 3 training days instead of overtraining like 6 days a week. So yeah, it's been an adjustment, but I feel like now my body's responding well.
Back to birth control. Do you want to maybe inform young women how the hormonal birth control affects their hormones? Because I feel like a lot of like 15, 16, 17-year-old girls might go into the doctor's office, get prescribed birth control, but they don't actually know how it's affecting their hormones.
So I have done a lot of research in the past couple months, but I've learned that it's pretty much just like a Band-Aid for symptoms. I was given it in like 6th grade, which is crazy. I was on it for more than a decade.
But like that's common. I don't think that's uncommon.
Yeah, I think it's like most people in middle school.
Wow.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. Yeah. For hormonal acne, they're like, here, take this. Didn't explain the side effects. If I would have known, I would have went on it. Then continued to stay on it all the way up until February of this year, which I'm 26, so over a decade. But as soon as I came off of it, I knew I had to change my nutrition, my training, my sleep, manage my stress better, like supplementation, because with the synthetic hormones that it's giving you, it completely tanks all of your vitamins B, C, E, zinc, magnesium, potassium. So now I'm working on getting all of those up, and our bodies detox through our liver. So post coming off the pill, I went through a 2-week hormone flush. I kind of thought of it as a Mediterranean style diet. So I was doing really high fat, moderate carb, moderate protein, but all whole foods. So I cut out gluten, dairy, alcohol, no caffeine. I focused on literally high fats, anything from the ground, nothing processed, no artificial sweeteners, to kind of detox my liver. That way my body wasn't so inflamed. And I noticed that during those 2 weeks post coming off the pill and doing that 2-week hormone flush, and I had different supplement regimen too, 2 gallons of water a day. It was crazy. But I lost about like 9 pounds, and most of that was the inflammation that the birth control pill was making me retain so much water weight. And so, yeah, looking back, I should have done more research, but the doctor should have given me the list of the side effects, because the reason I went off of it was because of infertility. I don't want that to be an issue in the coming years. And then I just constantly felt inflamed. I had anxiety. I had mood swings. I just didn't feel like myself. So coming off of it, it's definitely been like almost like rejuvenating. Like I feel like I can be me again. I don't feel as inflamed. I feel like my mood is stabilized. Working on getting my cycle more regular, which typically takes between like 3 to 6 months post pill, depending on blood work, depending on how long you were on it. But yeah, it's been a long journey.
Yeah. It has estrogen and progesterone, which keeps your body in a fake state of just post ovulation, so that your body doesn't think it should be ovulating and then releasing an egg, and that's how.
So like your body essentially thinks it's pregnant, right? Sort of.
No, it thinks it's post ovulation. So at that point, you've got high estrogen, relatively high progesterone. But what it does is it doesn't allow like a woman's body to go through the natural fluctuation in estrogen and progesterone that it would regularly go through in a cycle. And so that's part of the reason that it screws with your micronutrients, because the micronutrients you would normally use for those hormones are not being used properly. So, yeah. And then as far as coming off the pill, I know something that I learned was that most women's acne pretty much just gets worse for like 6 months when they come off the pill. And like the 6 month mark is like on average the worst. So I guess for women out there that are getting off the pill, just know that like it might get worse before it gets better for a little bit.
Yeah, and that's what I've talked
that's not
about.
something anyone wants to hear, but
yeah, it's definitely hard post pill. Like it was very hard. I think I'm up like now probably 9 pounds, which I am kind of going into this lean building phase. So calories have raised about 400 or 500. I think a lot of it is muscle. Hopefully with my progress photos and measurements, they haven't changed all that drastically. So I know I have put on a decent amount of muscle mass with that. Obviously still comes fat, but muscle weighs something. So I would say the weight gain has been kind of hard, but I know it's necessary for long-term progress. Also, once my hormones are balanced, I'll be able to go into a fat loss phase, lose the fat easily. I'll have a completely different body composition with more muscle. But yes, post pill hormonal acne has been rough. I feel like I'm 5 months in, so I feel like it's gotten bad, but hopefully by the end of 2023, it'll stabilize a little bit more.
Okay. And one question I do have is, when you were on the pill, were they doing blood tests regularly? Because I know at least for when guys do a steroid, which it's usually testosterone, that you can do it semi-safely if you are getting blood work done very regularly. So did they have like regular blood work? Or?
I mean, I did, but it was skewed because of being on the pill. It wasn't as accurate just because it's giving you synthetic hormones. So a lot of it wasn't as accurate as it would be if I were to do it now. But I think it's really dependent on what pill you're on, what dosage. Like I was on Estrella, I don't know, but there's some birth controls that are not hormonal. There's like the copper IUD, which I'm researching possibly to use, non-hormonal, but there's some negative side effects. Some people don't love it and will get it taken out. But there's like the patch, there's the shots, but all of those are hormonal. So if you've came off the pill and you're wanting something non-hormonal, I'd recommend doing research so you don't go back on something that's hormonal to screw up your hormones again. So I'm kind of now at the point like, do I want to continue to use my Oura Ring, which is Bluetooth connected to Natural Cycles app? It's body temperature. So it's FDA approved birth control. So it takes your body temperature that it scans in this ring, and Bluetooth connects to Natural Cycles app, and it'll tell whether you're fertile or ovulating, which is really cool. So it tracks your cycle. That is kind of a birth control method. So I've been kind of getting into that, and then possibly using the copper IUD, but to be determined because the side effects aren't great, I've heard.
But the tracking of your cycle, that's something else a lot of women might not know, is that you're technically only fertile like 6 days out of the month. 5 days for the part the man plays, and 1 day for the part that the woman plays.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a lot of people go on birth control, and I'm not sure that they realize what they're getting themselves into. Do you know much about, you told us you got on when you were in, what, 6th grade?
Yeah.
Do you know if that's normal, if most people just get on, or what their doctors say to them, if there's any usually kind of warnings? I mean, I know it's kind of like the vaccines, like they just tell you to get it and then everyone gets it.
Yeah. Well, I feel like it's like everybody in middle school. Like you either have really bad periods, bad cramps, bad symptoms. So they're like, oh, here, put you on birth control. Or it's like hormonal acne, which again is kind of like a Band-Aid. It doesn't get to the bottom of the root cause. It's just here, take this. I feel like maybe I don't remember, but I wasn't given the side effects, because if I would have known, it would have caused maybe infertility down the line, or my hormones to be tanked, then I definitely wouldn't have gone that route. So I wish we were educated more on what are we putting into our bodies. But again, I guess you live and you learn.
Yeah, this is a beef that I have with a lot of doctors. I don't think they do a great job educating their patients on potential side effects, which is why in our last episode, I think, Ted and I just talked about that it's important to go and read primary research yourself so that you actually know what the studies are saying and what the potential side effects are, because your doctor might not be telling you everything that you think they should or that you think they would. So
I guess we can go into estrogen dominance. Would you like to talk about that at all? I know that, like, along with the low testosterone epidemic in men, there's kind of like a high estrogen epidemic for women.
Yes. Yeah. Especially on hormonal birth control, you have a high estrogen dominance. So coming off the pill, that's why I did that 2-week hormone flush, was to help with that estrogen dominance. And I think it really did help. It kind of like reset my body. And now I'm really focusing on like anti-inflammatory foods. I've slowly weaved back in like dairy and gluten, but I think some of that is causing flare-ups for my hormonal acne. But yeah, I think definitely coming off the pill, if you do decide to go cold turkey, do updated blood work, and then I would have some guidance if you're interested in balancing hormones as quick as possible, have some guidance what to do post-pill, because there's things that you could do wrong and things you could do right off the bat to get your hormones balanced quicker.
do you want to talk about some of those things you can do to help?
Yeah. So kind of for me, I guess, with experience, I would definitely look at your training. If you're in this like fitness space, if you have a step goal, you have a specific training split. If you have those physique goals, look at your training. You're probably going to need to scale back. Pretty much a lot of what you're already doing, you're going to have to scale back intensity to keep that inflammation low. So external stress and internal stress, food you're eating, and externally, like what you're doing physically with your body, you're going to have to cut that back. So I lowered steps from like 20K a day to now I'm below 12K. That's my new step goal, which is still pretty high for the average person.
I think I hit like 8 or 10 and I'm happy with 10 when I get there.
Which is still good. I mean, I give most individuals should hit between 8 to 10,000, I think is healthy. But like I said, I feel like I'm an Energizer bunny. I feel better when I move a lot. So lowering movement has been hard. I used to train like 5 days a week. Now I'm scaled back to 3, keeping 2 to 3 RIR for my training sessions. So that's reps in reserve. I'm not going to failure on purpose because that's just going to create more inflammation. I'm kind of trying to keep stress at a minimum until I have more consistent regular cycles. So taking training intensity down, training and steps, so all movements, focusing more on sleep. So instead of waking up at 5 a.m. To train, I've been forcing myself to sleep in even an hour, extra 2 hours, and then pushing my training session later in the day so I can get that adequate sleep. Not focusing on just the quantity, but also the quality of sleep. So how many times a night do I wake up? Focusing on more so of a sleep routine, winding down at night. I've implemented journaling. I've implemented like Epsom salt baths, stretching, meditating, yoga, any type of like wind down routine I've tried to establish. That way I can get quality of sleep. And then really focusing on nutrition. So I've increased food. I focus on quality foods, not just quantity. So macros, and specific macros, carbs on my training days just to give me more fuel. So I've really focused on nutrient timing.
Yeah, I think one of the like parallels between women's hormones and men's hormones, which is something we've obviously talked more about on the show in the past, is that for like regulating your hormones, it's a lot of the same things, right? It's decreasing stress. It's making sure you're lifting and getting steps in, but not overtraining. Getting enough micronutrients and not cutting out any macronutrient groups, avoiding environmental toxins. It's a lot of the same exact things, but women are a little more like sensitive to some of these stressors than men are. Like testosterone, it's a 24-hour cycle. Women, it's like 28-day cycle, right? So in terms of like intermittent fasting or cutting out carbs, like women's hormones are a lot more sensitive to that than testosterone is for men. So a lot of stuff in the fitness industry, at least for like the past few decades, it's a lot more even now, especially with how a lot of people market to women, since women make most of the financial decisions in most families. But going back like for the past 40 years until 10 years ago, maybe, a lot of things were geared more towards men in the fitness community. But now, like women should know that a lot of things that are told to men as far as their hormones don't apply the same to women. So if people say you should intermittent fast, blah, 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 to decrease calories, like that might be good advice for men, but maybe not as good advice for women. Kind of lost how I was explaining it there, but I think I got my point across at the end there.
Yes. Yeah. So intermittent fasting, I think a lot of people think it's like this magic tool. If I intermittent fast, I'm going to lose weight. Maybe, possibly, but it's not the eating windows that's magic. It's the calories consumed in a 24-hour, 48-hour, 72-hour period. I tell clients, if you want to push your first meal up or forward, I guess. So not eat at 6 a.m., it's 10 a.m., that's fine. But you're also going to just add more stress because when you sleep during the night, you're putting your body in a high stress, cortisol levels are high state. So when you wake up, your cortisol levels are already high. And people, women especially, even some of my clients, I'll look at their food logs and they'll just have coffee for breakfast. That's caffeine. That's already then going to just drastically shoot up your cortisol levels. That's doing nothing for you. Then you intermittent fast, you wait to eat until noon. What good is that doing? Most likely your satiation is going to be there. You're going to be overly hungry. Your energy is going to be depleted. Your cortisol levels are going to be really high. When you have your first meal, your blood sugar is going to be off, and then you're going to be more tempted to overeat later in the day. So I would say try to eat within 30 to 60 minutes of waking up and have food before caffeine to level out your cortisol levels. And coffee for breakfast, no, that doesn't count.
These are the little things you learn too when you actually train real people. Like before I started training people, if someone had asked me if it matters if they eat right before bed, I would have said no. It's about the calories that you eat in a day. But then after training people and seeing how their behaviors actually affect their results, you start to find out, when people are eating right before bed, their sleep is worse. And then you start to look into it yourself and you see the studies that show eating within 3 hours before bed increases nighttime awakening. So there's stuff like that you learn when you train people in person that make you a good coach. Do you want to maybe switch off of hormones and talk about how you have trained people over the course of your, 4-year, I guess, training career? Maybe things you did in the beginning that you don't do anymore, or things you've learned when you've trained people?
Yes. Yeah. So definitely with the online space, it's cool because you can have different clientele. I went from starting with just friends and family, college senior year, fall senior year. So 2019, I passed both my certifications, and then I didn't start my business or my LLC until June of 2020 after graduating college, and I started my business right then. So I started with friends and family, and they were great at first, great support system, but they weren't giving me like kind of the tough love that I needed. So with each client in the past 3 years, I've learned more and more and more. And kind of looking back, I definitely would have changed what I've done personally with my own journey to better get the education to give to my clients. So I'm ever evolving as a coach. I have a coach myself. So I think it's important. Coaches have coaches to learn from them. I've had mentors. I've had business coaches. I've had previous coaches than my one now. Jeremiah, love him. I've learned so much that I've thought, oh, they're my coach. I'm going to follow what they're doing because they're a coach themselves. And then I started to do what they did with me and it wasn't working. So I think being an online coach or a coach in general, I think it's just taking what you learn from experience from you or working with other clients and kind of using that as leverage kind of to grow from that. So definitely, I feel like as I start to work with more in-person clients, that's just going to help build my online profile more, especially with form and technique, just because I feel like most of my online clients are nutrition based. I have some who do nutrition only, training only, and then nutrition and training is my highest tiered program. But I'm wanting to get more so in like the technique for training. And so that's kind of what I'm wanting to level up my business is in person for sure.
Do you want to talk about lifting and how you like to train people in terms of programming?
Yes. Yeah. So I have my own app in the App Store, Little Lifting Lex, that I had designed. I do have an app team, customer service team that kind of helps me with the tech side of things. I'm very not tech savvy. So I hire out to do all my things, website, app, programming, Excel spreadsheets. I think definitely what I've learned just being a business owner is create systems that you can put in place that make better use for your time. And with client programming specifically, as they fill out their intake form and I onboard them as a client, I'll have them send me specific training videos so I'm able to see their strengths and their weaknesses. We'll talk about lifestyle goals, at home or gym friendly. Some of my clients are a mix of both. And I look at their past history of exercise. So do they have a solid foundation of lifting? Do they have previous injuries? What does their lifestyle look like? I'm not going to take someone that hasn't really lifted yet to 5 days of lifting. Find a middle ground, a happy medium. They tell me that they can do 45 minutes of lifting. I'm not going to give them a 60-minute plan. I kind of meet them where they're at, and then we progress from there. So specifically with training, it definitely depends on the client. Typically, on average, I program them like a 3 to 4 day split. Some clients do well with a 5-day split. I think it's very individualized. I do like to structure at least 2 full rest days. They get step goal, cardio goal, depending on their phase. But I would say definitely for online, it's having a platform for them to be able to view it easily. So that's how I came up with my app, because I want everything in one place so they don't get to the gym and question, what am I doing today? Because most people in the gym go to a gym and they do 1,000 different exercises. They overtrain muscle groups. They don't know what to train. And that's not helpful for progressive overload. So, yeah, that's why I think having an app in one place. I have monthly subscribers who follow just monthly workouts, and then individual one-on-one clients if they need a little bit more customized programming. But I think it's very dependent on the individual and what program I offer them.
Yeah, I mean, Ted and I have talked time and time again the importance of following a program, just so that, you are progressively overloading and that you know what you're doing when you're going into the gym and that you have a plan. And we talk on the wealth side a lot about budgeting. Like it's very important to have a budget and to stick to it so that you can hit your savings goal, your investing goal, and all of that.
Yeah, like budgeting, as I kind of talk about that in my stories, like macros. Macros is the same thing. Protein, fats, and carbs. You can budget just like you do for your day-to-day life. You can budget your macros. You have a certain amount of protein, fats, and carbs to work with. How are you going to budget that? So kind of going off that with nutrition.
Getting into macros, women tend to have maybe a stereotype of not always hitting their protein levels. We have talked about this on the show before. What is the biggest struggle that you come across when it comes to some of your clients? I assume you have mostly women clientele.
Yes. Yeah.
So what are some of the biggest things you see when it comes to women hitting their protein targets?
So I typically with protein, I like to structure protein like at least 0.6 grams to 1 gram per pound of body weight, dependent on where they come to me. So if someone is, let's say, 220 pounds and she's wanting to lose weight, She comes to me, I look at her food log. If she's new to tracking, I'll have her just journal what she's eating. So I have kind of like an overview, where is she eating without changing anything. So I can kind of find a middle ground. This is how I should start her plan without giving her too drastic of a change. Because I want to meet her halfway in her lifestyle too. If I make a plan and it's completely opposite of what she's doing now, she's not going to be able to be consistent. So I would probably start her at the lower end, like 0.6 grams per pound of body weight, and then work up. I like to have protein closer to like 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of body weight. But I look at her current food and then I'll give her suggestions, swaps or add-ons, what she's already eating. And then a little bit deeper into her coaching, we'll dive into nutrient timing. So we'll look at her eating windows. When is she training? What is she having pre-workout, post-workout, maybe intra-workout, depending on her phase that she's in. And then kind of weaving in, what is she doing with her lifestyle? Eating out? Is she having vacations and whatnot? But looking at their food log from a day-to-day, like weekly basis for our check-ins. When I touch base with them on Monday, I'll look at their MyFitnessPal diary or whatever they use to track their food and give them suggestions, because most people are probably eating like 80 grams
I was going to ask, like,
of protein.
Where are your women coming in when they come to you? Because if I look, like, I only train 2 to 4 clients at a time right now because part-time in addition to the Army. But if I look at like my past 6 or 7 clients, like, it's not hard for me to get my men eating like 150, 160, 170. Can easily get them doing that usually in like a week. But for my women, will be like months in and it'll be like, 120, just keep trying to drive it up a little bit. And it's just like always trying to lift them up over the finish line on the protein. Because of that, what are some tips and tricks you use for women to get more protein in the day? I know, like, obviously protein shake is like the easiest catch-all answer on that one, but what are some more helpful tips that you have for women that struggle to eat a lot of protein?
Yeah, so I would take your protein goal, divide that by how many times a day you eat. So if your protein goal is 125 grams, you eat 5 times a day, try to at least get 25 grams of protein at each meal. Typically with clients, I'll tell them front load your day with at least 20 bare minimum grams of protein for your first meal. Try to shoot closer to 30 to 40 grams, keeping protein readily available, prepped on hand. If you don't have time to prep, go get rotisserie chicken, turkey deli meat, eggs, egg whites, cottage cheese, yogurt. I always have frozen fish on hand. I always have frozen chicken, thawed out, put in the Instant Pot, crock pot. For convenience, protein bars, protein powder, great for on the go, but look at the quality of protein you're getting. So if you're struggling to get in protein, then double the protein you're already getting. So if you typically have like 3 ounces of beef at chicken at dinner, double that. Have 6 ounces of beef at dinner. And then if you snack in between the day, make sure that you have like 15 to 20 grams even with your snacks. So I think prepping, pre-logging, and having just food sources readily available. Like, I don't always have time to prep chicken, but turkey deli meat you can buy, pre-grilled chicken, rotisserie chicken, you can shred that up easily, like 5 ounces, there you go. So I think a lot of it's taking action steps to get to your goals. It's going to be work and you're going to have to make sacrifices, whether it's 10 minutes of prepping chicken, throw it in the Instant Pot, throw it in the crock pot the night before. It's going to take time to prepare, but if your goals are important to you, you're going to prioritize it.
Nick and I are all about meal prepping, and we've got Nick has a rotisserie chicken out
on the counter
right now.
Because I got home from work and we were crunched for time, so I just went to the grocery store and got a rotisserie chicken, and that's what I ate for dinner.
Alex and I have been on several dates where it's like, oh, we need dinner. What is cheap and can get us a lot of protein? And we just stop at the grocery store and get a rotisserie chicken and a bar of dark chocolate.
Perfect.
Ted will eat it with his hands.
And I just eat it with my hands like a feral animal. But yeah, the rotisserie chicken's money because it's cheap, it's high protein, but really quick. But yeah, let's switch over to calories. Calories is a really fun one for women because a lot of times if I'm doing an intake with someone and they're writing down what they normally eat, I'll get it and I'll be like, this is equating to 600 or 700 calories. That doesn't seem accurate, right? I'm assuming you've run into this problem before too, right? So some women will think that they eat very, very little, and they'll do that in an effort to lose weight. But when you slash calories over and over and over and over again, you run out of room to slash calories. And like we talked about earlier, you're really disrupting your hormones, and you're not going to be in a state that your body wants to go through a fat loss phase. So there's multiple avenues we can go down here, but I think one of the biggest ones here is that when women are in this mindset a lot where they think they're eating like 800 calories a day, they might actually be doing that multiple days a week, but then they have the 2 or 3 days a week where they're eating crazy. 3,000 calories. And so their body, their maintenance is actually very low because they've suppressed it a lot. But then weekends come and like your body's going to gain weight, of course, in that kind of scenario. So maybe the first thing we could go over is, how do you work with clients on kind of regulating that intake so that we can raise it a little bit and not have that kind of binge and restrict kind of mentality?
So first off, I look at what during their intake form, I'll have them send me either food logs if they're currently tracking, or just starting to journal what they eat. I like to see from like a 2 to 3 day perspective, what are you eating in a given day? But then I even broaden that. If they tell me that they're a restrictor or an overeater, I ask like the why behind it, because most of my clients that I've worked with have some type of cycle of under eating or overeating. And I look at from an average like weekly standpoint. Some of my clients will do like unintentionally calorie cycling. I'll put them in a calorie cycling plan where I strategically place like a little bit lower days to higher days to give them more weekend flexibility. But even before that, I take a look at the BLT, so bites, licks, and taste tests. Typically, that's where most of your calories are coming from. If you think you're like under eating, I'm only eating 800 calories, but are you really intentionally, are you taking time to actually log the food and weigh the food that you're eating? Because you might think that you're under eating, but you're then really overeating. So I then will reverse diet them, actually add calories slowly to speed up their metabolism, to restore hormones, get them to a good place so they can be consistently fueled throughout the week. That way, come the weekend, they don't feel deprived. They don't feel depleted. They're actually satiated. They're less likely then to overeat. So it's consistently eating enough calories so they feel fueled, that they can then stay consistent over time. So I think reverse diet is where most people need to start. Even if their goal is fat loss, reverse diet is the way to go.
Yeah, I know you talk about reverse dieting quite a bit on your Instagram. Obviously, there's no one answer for everyone, right? Everyone's different. It always depends. That's something we say a lot as coaches. It depends, right? But what is like a number that you're often trying to get some of your female clients that have suppressed their calories for a while? What's like a calorie number that you're usually trying to get them to on that reverse? I know it is different per person, but just so maybe someone listening has like kind of like a target range in mind.
So for reference, I'm 4'11", about like 118 pounds. I'm trying to get closer to like that 2,000 plus range. Now, right now I have taken down calories a little bit just because my training intensity has gone down. I'm still at a healthy point, still working calories up. But most people aren't shorter than me. I mean, 4'11", I think is as short as I've ever worked with. So, but for most women, I try to get like above 1,700, 1,800. But really ideally, I mean, unless you're like a lazy couch potato and you're very sedentary, you should be well above that 1,700 mark. Unless you're 4'11", I think height and activity level does play a big role in it. But most women should not be cutting at like 12, definitely not 1,200, 1,300 calories. I mean, I've been there before, but there's no need to cut that low, even with being short and petite like me. So most people should definitely be able to eat like 2,000 plus.
Yeah, I think the RDA, we've hit on this before, I think, Nick, or maybe it was just a Tesla post I did, but the RDA for like a toddler is like 1,300 calories. Yeah. So if you're a full adult person, you should probably be eating more than that.
Especially if you're training.
Yeah. So I mean, I probably eat about 3,000 calories a day, and I haven't been really gaining or losing weight. Maybe losing a little bit, but yeah, my maintenance is probably around 3,000.
It's so different working with men because I mean, Nick and I can throw down 4,000.
I could not imagine eating that much. My digestion would be crap.
But I'm sure you've had clients come to you before that are thinking they're cutting at like 1,200 calories, right? But I almost never will recommend like a woman client goes below 1,600 or 1,700 is like the lowest I'll go with someone during a cut. For guys, obviously, it's a lot higher. But for women, like a lot of women can be losing weight if they reverse properly at 2,000 calories a day.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And you have to be very careful. It's a very fine line between your BMR, that's your basal metabolic rate, and obviously your maintenance. You don't want to shoot below that BMR because that's where your body just needs to live. So if they come to me eating under that BMR, the first thing I'm going to do is increase calories. That's like, I hate to be that person, but I'm going to tell you, you're not going to be dropping food any lower. And typically they fight back until they...
Yeah. With almost every female client I have that's trying to lose weight, we reverse first. It's the first thing we do.
Yeah.
That's just periodizing calories, get into that post-season mindset first, reverse calories, and then get your body in a state where it's ready for fat loss. Do you want to talk about maybe for any of the women out there that are trying to lose weight, just kind of how you usually structure a reverse diet in terms of how you add calories and how long a lot of your clients have to stay on that reverse for? Because some people think it's like, 2 weeks of eating in a calorie surplus, that's a reverse diet. It takes a lot longer. It's kind of like getting your period back for women. Like the longer that you had that amenorrhea, the longer it's going to take to get it back. Same thing with the longer you suppress your calories in a very low deficit, the longer you might have to stay in that surplus to get your TDE back in a place where you're ready to cut.
Yeah. So maintenance, you should be there for most of the year. I like to put clients at maintenance for longer than you were in a deficit. So if you've been dieting for 2 years, don't ask for a diet for less than 2 years, because you're just going to screw up your metabolism and here again, your hormones. So typically with the reverse diet, you do have to realize, and I always like to start with clients like this, if you come to me under eating and we do a reverse diet, you're technically still in a deficit, in a fat loss phase until you reach maintenance. And that maintenance is a range. It's really hard to say. It could be a 200 to 300 range. But I like to push calories as high as I can, because your maintenance is going to increase if your activity increases. It's dependent on your age, your weight, your height. And so typically I like to at least get up to 7,500 calories, but dependent. If you're under eating and you come to me eating 1,200 calories and your BMR is 1,500, you're drastically under eating. I'm going to bump it up to at least your BMR. And then typically dependent, every 2 to 3 weeks, I like to increase calories. Unless you come to me severely under eating, then every week we'll increase calories as much as I need, 200, 300. But if we're ending a fat loss phase and we're at a good place with calories, and we have enough time to reverse slowly, from a psychological standpoint, I like to reverse slower, just because mentally it's hard for women. Been there, done that. Going from under eating to say, I'm going to be eating 500 more calories. That's a lot for someone to consume. Or from a psychological standpoint, that'd be a lot more food. It's kind of scary. So I would then just slowly increase 75 to 100 calories and then over time. But it's really dependent on where they're at calorie wise, where they need to be for their like subjected maintenance range. But typically around every 2 to 3 weeks, I'll increase. Again, dependent on where they come to me.
How long does your average client stay in a reverse for, do you think?
So I would say it takes on average like 4, 6, maybe 8 weeks in a reverse diet, and then maintenance at as long as or longer than you've been in a deficit. So I have clients right now going through a maintenance phase. Some of them have taken diet breaks because technically you're still on a diet if you're in a reverse. Over a vacation, and they've had periods of untracked days that were kind of spacing out their increases because of I like to be more consistent. So it's really pay attention to your biofeedback. That's your energy, your digestion, your sleep, your strength, or your recovery, your hunger, hormones, dependent on how fast I increase food. So if you come to me and you're starving at our check-in, I'm going to increase food. If your weight is dropping and measurements are dropping, you're still in a deficit, I'm going to increase food. So, but if you come to me and weight has spiked a little bit, and you're not hungry, maybe I'll wait a week. We'll wait a week for your metabolism to increase a little bit, or maybe you haven't been consistent, and then I'll increase food.
Yeah, and this is where having like a real coach instead of using Chat GPT for your diet probably is a big help. Because when you work with more people, you start to get a better feel for like what someone actually needs as far as the timeline of things. Mm-hmm. Nick, do you have any questions as far as training goes?
I don't. I think we covered everything and more.
All right, I've got one last question for you. I guess I can lead with something because this is a question where it's like, what's your biggest weakness, right? So I'll answer first, but the question is, what is something that you did when you started training people that you've changed and you don't do anymore, right? So mine was when I first started training people, I was like, okay, how do we get this person to a barbell squat, bench, and deadlift? I don't do that anymore. Like I still want to progress people to those if I can, because they're like the gold standard for me. Although I've changed my mind in that, and it's like, okay, how can we get this person to a trap bar deadlift? Because most people don't need to conventional deadlift, and a lot of people are going to have mobility issues where they're not going to get there, but I can get most people to a trap bar deadlift pretty easily with a lot less risk. So just different things like that. Now I progress people more towards that, like trap bar deadlift, dumbbell bench. Like it just depends on the person and their mobility and injury history, what my goal is for them in terms of lifting and exercises. So what's something you did in the beginning that looking back, you're like, oh, that was a mistake as a new trainer and you don't do it anymore?
So most of my clients, good question, are lifestyle clients. And at the beginning, I was an athlete. I was a college athlete. I'm like, everybody should train 5 to 6 days a week. Everybody has to. You know, I'm moving this much. Why can't you? And I sometimes have to put my foot in my mouth. Like, not everybody wants to train 6 days a week. Not everybody can do that. They have work, they have kids, they have family, they have friends, they have other obligations that not everybody wants to be that college athlete or that Energizer bunny like I am. So it took me a good year to realize to be a healthy individual, you don't have to be training every single day. Then it was 6 days a week for me, then 5 days. Now I'm at 3 training sessions a week. So I would say it's realizing that not everybody wants to be the best. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's just for lifestyle. I have a couple postpartum clients right now. They're just wanting to be able to feel stronger and lift up their child and get back to just regular living post baby. Or I have clients who are juggling so many other obligations that it's not feasible for them to train 6 days a week. So we've scaled it back to 3 days, and they're a lot better. They can give quality workouts. Not always about quantity, it's about quality. So I would say that's definitely the biggest lesson, is not everybody has to go crazy like I've done previously.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of where I've gone, because I'd say up until about a year ago, I really only cared about the amount of weight I was moving in the gym, and I would do things like dirty bulk and overeat so that I could put on weight to get there. But I felt awful all the time. And now that it's I do still care about my numbers, but I care more about how I feel and just that I have energy now. And so I'm also doing a 3-day program right now, and I haven't maxed yet, but I feel like my numbers are still going up.
Mm-hmm. I used to love the Nick dirty bulks in college. There was always a pot of homemade buffalo chicken dip on the stove, ready to go.
Dollar menu at McDonald's too, dude. It was 3 cheeseburgers and 3 McChickens. I don't know. It was 2,500 calories or something like that. And for $6, so that's what I would eat. But I felt horrible.
You've come a long way, Nick.
Yeah, now it's just like I talked about before. It's just whole foods. I pretty much just eat ground beef, steak, vegetables, berries. That's about it.
Oh, I guess that's something we could touch on real quick, because I feel like you've gone through like a diet transformation, because in the early days of Little Lifting Lex Instagram account, it was like all non-whole food sources of protein. It was the like American nut butter we always saw on the stories. So how has like your mindset around the source of protein or the source of calories changed?
Yeah, so definitely coming off hormonal birth control is kind of like, okay, where is my food coming from? Where are the nutrients? And so now there's specific nutrients where I nail every single day. Berries every day, spinach twice a day, chia seeds every day for healthy fat and fiber. I have like oranges, carrots, like there's specific potatoes for potassium. There's specific nutrients where I literally, it's a non-negotiable. I'm going to get them in because I knew I was depleted in them for so long. So being a macro coach, all foods fit, yes. But you have to look at the quality of food that you're getting for proper digestion, your fiber intake, like anti-inflammatory foods. That's what I'm really focusing on. I'm still like, I have dessert every night. I have alcohol sometimes, but like, how is that then affecting you? How is it affecting your sleep and digestion? You look at that. So definitely from a quality standpoint, I've definitely been looking at like ingredients, limiting processed foods, although I still have them, just more so in moderation. I've just been looking at more quality sources.
Yeah, because I mean, we talk a lot about macros, and like it's important what's in your food, but it's just as important what's not in your food. Like a lot of these processed foods, they have a laundry list of ingredients on the back. And I mean, I'm starting to learn what some of them are, but half the time I look, I'm like, I have no idea what that is. Yeah. And you know, you just don't know how that really affects you.
Typically the like lower calorie, more macro friendly options are going to be harder on your gut, harder on your digestion. Yeah. So I've known that I've had to cut out like all xanthan gar gums, any type of like added sweetener. I mean, I'll use stevia, but like zero sugar or 0 calorie syrup, like, or skinny syrups I used to use to put in my coffee, or baked goods. It wrecked my gut. And I realized that when I stopped adding all of those in during the 2-week hormone flush, that when I added it back, it was like a no. So now it's definitely been changing my like diet for sure.
I don't do it with all my clients, but with a few clients I have done like a gut health protocol, just depending on if the client needs it, right? Some people do need that. And one of the things in that is if it says gum on like in the ingredient list, don't eat it. So there's a lot of little things that for gut health, but that's a separate episode. But we had a great time having you on here today.
Thank you.
So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks. Lexi.
It was fun. Good to catch up.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us today at Weights and Wealth. And don't forget to apply today's lessons to live healthy and wealthy.
If this conversation will contribute to your fitness and financial gains, please share it with a friend or family member and give a 5-star review so more people can lift bigger weights and get bigger bank accounts.